Whether you're a seasoned vet of the payments industry or a brand new rookie who just heard the term dual pricing for the first time, you're in the right place. This is the only podcast that shares the strategies and stories behind selling merchant services, all from the perspective of those on the front lines. Welcome to AgentFirst. All right, welcome back to AgentFirst. I'm John. He's Justin.
Hello.
I feel like I should just say dual pricing go.
Man, I could get in a soapbox.
But let's. I want to be careful, right? Because you know, I this is all opinion. We're kind of crossing into how we feel about things. And you have talked previously that dual pricing is one of those. It's part of what makes right now the good old days, right? From a revenue potential, from things like that. But also the reality that once a merchant is on dual pricing, and so if it's not you, it's going to be someone else.
Right.
And once they're on, that window to change them gets a lot smaller. Right. And so if you would just kind of set the stage why it is that dual pricing is something that we feel like we're constantly talking about, and then maybe we'll get into the stuff that'll get you in trouble.
So 10 years from now, we're gonna come back to this podcast and we're gonna laugh at this because we're like, man, remember we could do that? Yes. Holy cow, that was crazy, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and they're like, God, we were making that much money on these deals. I joke around about that, and I hope it doesn't go away. But, it kind of reminds me of our conversations about, the good old days when people were charging, interchange plus 200 basis points back when this industry first started. But to double down on what you're saying is that, if a merchant, there's so many merchants every day that are switching to some sort of, we can call it fee-based pricing. It's kind of the moniker. I'll shout out to Rob Johnson on that, our director of operations. He loves that term, so he kind of coined that. Yes. So I'll give that one to you, Rob. But dual pricing and surcharging both kind of fall under that, and all the rest of them that whether they may or may not be compliant, they all kind of fall under this concept of I'm going to recoup my credit card processing fees by charging the card holder, the customer, a fee to take cards. Now, for the longest time, that was not allowed, number one. And number two, even after it was allowed, was really frowned upon for a long, long time. And we'll kind of talk into that deeper, and maybe that part of it, some of the history of, and some of the evolution of that. But today, it is an extremely popular program. It is, at many places. I mean, I can tell you at PayCompass, it's a large percentage of our sales, and I know many of the places are seeing the same thing. It's important that you do it in a compliant way, whether you're doing surcharging or dual pricing. That it's done in a compliant way is extremely important, and it's really taking off like crazy. And to speak to, your point, once you have taken a merchant's fees away and it's zero, merchants have a lot of things to worry about. They're not really that concerned of, hey, let me try to save my customers, 0.25% here. Because I'm worried about the fact that, my cook didn't show up for this morning's shift, or rent just went up $800 a month, or why is the trash bin overflowing, or, all the things that, they're worried about. That's, hey, that's working. It's not costing me anything. I'm fine. When I pick up the phone and call for help, I get help. So, I'll say it 1,000 times, and I'll keep saying it 1,000 more times is if you're not talking to your merchants right now about, this type of program, somebody else is. And we just had this happen this last week, to one of our top agents. Just hadn't talked to his merchant about it, lost one of his merchants, said, what happened? Oh, I went with this program where I get to recoup all my fees. It's awesome. And he's like, oh, we do that too. Like, oh, I didn't know. You never told me. And not only did he lose that customer, he lost the revenue he was making off the customer, but more importantly, lost the potential revenue of that much higher profits that you get off of those programs as well. So, I say to people all the time, one of the most beneficial things you could do if you have a sizable book is spend the next couple of months talking to them all about these types of programs, convert some of them, natural increase in revenue without really increasing, your merchant numbers, but kind of lock them down. So unless they're getting horrible service, they don't know where to call, you walk in on somewhere that's already doing dual pricing or surcharging, you're gonna have a tough time taking that customer away.
Yeah.
It's not like the days, before of like, okay, you're at 80 basis points. Yeah, I can take it to 75 basis points, or I can take it to 70 or whatever. Honestly, it's just kind of a box is checked off for them. Like, that's working. It's not costing me anything. I'm good. Why mess with it? No reason to.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I'm seeing as well too, is that, again, to your point, once fees are down to zero, you've kind of taken away what is oftentimes the largest pain point, right? So unless you've got bad service, or you've got a hardware challenge or something like that, right? Now you're relying on things that are outside of your control to happen and hoping they call you first.
Right.
And
Yeah,
I think that's not a place we want to be in with our merchants. I love the idea of kind of cross-selling your own merchants on a program like this.
Yeah.
So, it goes without saying, again, we're, in no way are we pretending like we're the only folks that have it, but if you're somewhere that doesn't, please don't let that train.
Oh, exactly. Yes.
So when we talk about compliant, right, and here's where I know we get a little bit sticky.
Yeah.
So when you look at kind of the different options here for fee-based pricing, to use Rob's term, do you have kind of a preferred flavor, or is it that there are a couple different ways to do it and you just have to make sure that you kind of stay within the edges of the sandbox of each one?
Yeah, I mean, there are some that are just, let's start with what is kind of the history of this. Maybe that'll help people understand maybe the history of this is that, for many years, there was no ability to recoup those costs unless you were a government agency. Visa wrote those rules in a long time ago, things like convenience fees, which were allowed for like utilities, government agencies. And that was done in a way to try to encourage the use of credit cards for those entities. So, hey, you need to recoup your costs. We'll allow you to do that. Convenience fees been out there for a long time, and that's been structured in Visa's rules for a long time. When Visa finally allowed, and it was through a lawsuit that took for a while, and Visa finally said, okay, this is going to be allowed. Here's the rules behind it. It was what's called surcharging. And surcharging, there's a lot of rules behind that. There's even the Durbin Amendment that was part of the Wall Street Reform Act. There's a lot of moving parts to it, but the end result is that surcharging is only to be applied on credit cards, not on debit cards. It originally had a cap of 4%. Or whatever you were paying for your credit card processing, but it couldn't be any more. That's recently been reduced to 3% now. You had to go through a registration program with Visa and MasterCard to do that, and you had to have very specific signage around it. Now, once that first came out, it was sweet. We've got it, some of the large retailers that fought for it were like, cool, we've got it. And then it never got used. Sure. I think the appetite was not there yet in the space for that. Over time now, little by little, bit by bit, it has become an extremely popular program, and has expanded into, the dual pricing side. So, dual pricing, and this is where things can get hairy and people can argue for hours about this. And I'm not looking for, Visa to be breathing down my neck here. So I'm trying to share as much of this factual as possible here. Is dual pricing is meant to be, hey, I have a cash price and I have a credit price, right? If you think about the example that's used by Visa a lot is a gas station. Yeah. You pull up to gas stations, you have cash price and credit price. Very similar, right? What that is kind of, but that is very hard to do.
Sure.
you're gonna have a menu with your cheeseburgers, you have a menu, a cash price and a credit price. Oh, you want to add onion rings, this cash price, credit price for that. I think it's very complex. So what that's kind of morphed into in our industry is instead the critical thing here about the dual pricing is that it should not be a surprise to the customer after they have handed you their card.
Right.
That's the critical piece, is that there should be notification ahead of time, and that they should have a choice to say, okay, I see the cash price and the credit price. And that's where dual pricing is coming to play now. Dual pricing is now out there on many credit card machines to where it will display the cash price, cash or debit price, and the card price. So it will give you kind of those choices so you can see it. Many card holders, we've really kind of reached this place in society now where people understand, like, okay, I'm probably gonna pay that fee if I use my credit card. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I understand you're paying the fee, so I get it. And they kind of just go along with that, and most people just push the button and go along. But
we have Ticketmaster to thank for that.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly, right. Yeah. And so there's but that's the critical part to Visa. And I don't want to pretend like I'm here representing Visa, but if you listen to if you read their guidance documents, and I'm one of those nerds that do all that stuff and read code and all that stuff, it's about making sure that it's done in a compliant way, and that there is ample notification ahead of time. There should not be hey, I hand you a card and then, oh, that was more than what you told me it was going to be.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah, that's the spirit of it, right? Is that the customer understands at the time they're choosing how to pay, what the difference is between the two. So that there isn't a mismatch between what they thought they were going to pay and what they ended up paying.
Right. And to kind of elaborate on this a little further, there's probably people out here, listening to this right now, that are saying, it just doesn't feel right. Or I've had this conversation with business owners, like, this is just the cost of doing business. I can't imagine passing this on to my customers. And I get that, because you've been doing this, for 30 years a certain way, and you've just kind of eaten that cost.
Yeah. I think most places have built it into their pricing, I would think.
They feel like it was built in them. But my thoughts are a little different on that, is that when somebody makes a decision, I'm at your business and I make a decision to do something that costs you more money, I expect that I should have to pay for that. And to kind of put that into an example that I use regularly is, if I come come to your restaurant and I order a hamburger, or I order the filet mignon, I expect to pay more for the filet mignon. Why? Well, they're both beef, right? Well, that filet mignon costs you more money. So I'm expecting I'm going to pay more money for the filet mignon than the hamburger. They're both food. They're both, well, it's the same thing when it comes down to credit cards. If I pull out cash and I hand you cash, we can go down the argument of those cash handling costs and blah, blah, blah. But I'm not, there's no fees tied to that. You're putting that away in the till, and that's that. Yeah. If I hand you a credit card, I know that that's costing you money to accept it. I understand that. As the consumer in today's day and age, we understand that. And therefore, I'm costing you more money.
Right.
Why should I not pay for that additional cost? It's not fair, in my opinion, to the rest of the people who are paying cash. They would have to pay elevated fees to cover their credit card processing. So that's the to me, that's the justification. And I think, I don't think it's one of those like, oh, we're just trying to sell you something. I truly believe in that concept of, I'm going to cost you more money. Why wouldn't I pay for it?
Right.
I'm okay. I use my credit card all the time at places, that are charging me, 4% fee. And I'm fine with it, because, to me, it's way easier to use my credit card. It's easier to manage. It's easier to manage the expenses. I'm getting points on it. I'm fine with that. I have cash in my pocket. I can just use the cash and save the 4%. But I don't, because I'm okay with that, knowing that, hey, that's costing them more, so I should have to pay a little.
That makes sense. And I feel like consumers' awareness of that has changed significantly over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah.
I think we used to know that it was something different and probably assume there was some cost, but we've all now we've got a side hustle, we've done fundraising for a nonprofit or a school or whatever, right? We've done something
right.
where the cost of processing cards has hit us. And so we've said, okay, everybody else has to do this too.
Yeah.
And so it isn't just this hidden thing that, that we're maybe unaware of.
And I think the pandemic, COVID, the pandemic, really elevated that awareness. I mean, you think during that time of how aware we became of the struggles of small business owners. I mean, it's seems like a different time and, a whole different galaxy almost of thinking of like, how we had everything was plastic wrapped and, you went to the Chinese restaurant and they were, that had plastic everywhere and you're sliding your card through this little homemade tray trying to protect everybody, and all the struggles they had to do to try to be compliant with rules and also be safe and the costs associated with delivering food and all those things that all small business owners, I think we became a lot more aware of that and understanding of, hey, these are all, these costs are all out there for everybody. And if we're going to cost you more money, sure, we should pay more.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talked about that's kind of what the actual dual pricing is.
Yeah.
What are some of the other kind of ways to accomplish that same goal, but maybe in slightly different flavors?
Right. So there's other ways to do this. I mean, there's models out there that are cash discounting, and that's a lot of times I even get I'm guilty of this. I'll call the entire program cash discounting because that's what it was originally called, and so it's just kind of the overall program name. That's not right, but it's just an easy description. I mean, heck, we had T-shirts printed with that in the early days, said that. So, but true cash discounting is my prices are listed, and those are credit prices. And then when you walk up, I offer you a cash discount if you pay with cash. That's true cash discounting. And some people will do that in conjunction with their credit card processing as well to help them like reprint menus or print double menus or redo their process. That can be done at the point of sale, at the machine. Most machines support that as well. That's true cash discounting. Some people will call the other methods, dual pricing and such cash discounting. It's not truly, it's not. There's some other methods out there, and these where you start getting into the really, hairiness of this to where there's a lot of arguments about compliance. And I'm not here to, get into that part of it, but the non-cash adjustment has been a very popular one for a long time. That one, arguably is on the not compliant side, just because of the way the nature of it, the way it works is it's not providing a choice at the time. There's lots of arguments out there. We could go on, for days about where does Visa's ability to, where's Visa's ability to regulate end and where does it start? Is Visa able to tell all the resorts in Vegas that they can't charge a resort fee? If no, then why can't a small business owner charge a service fee?
Right.
I think where those lines get blurred is where, hey, we charge you this fee only if you use a credit card. We don't if you use cash. Well, it pretty clearly becomes it's a credit card fee.
It's tied to payments.
Yeah.
Right?
So if you're tying it to payments in any sort of way, now you're inviting in that regulation, that requirements. If you're charging fees that are not tied to payments, then hey, obviously the door is wide open there. That's outside of Visa's rules. That ticketing fees, delivery fees, disposal fees, shop fees, resort fees. There's all that stuff's out there. Just because it's called a fee charged by the merchant doesn't mean that Visa's saying no to all of those. It's when you say, hey, we're only going to charge in this situation, and we didn't tell you about it beforehand, that they're now going to be like, hey guys, let's take a step back here. Okay. And then you've got then the traditional surcharging that we talk about. And then the one that's actually really becoming, I'm seeing take off more and more, is what we call a hybrid model, where it is surcharging. So you're recouping the fees on credit card only, and then still charging a fee for debit cards only to the merchant. So are they recouping 100% of their costs? No. But depending upon the mixture of cards, they might be recouping 75% of it. Okay. So, and those are a lot of times people that are, very concerned about the compliance. I want to make sure I'm compliant. Sure. I want to make sure I'm doing this right. And that's a way to achieve that without, worrying about that.
Because again, I think you mentioned earlier, compliance really is credit card is one, and then everything else, cash, check, debit is
right.
A second category.
Right. And that's where you could get 10 people in here for the payments industry. They're all going to argue about different, sure. All that differently. Like, is debit card only PIN debit?
Right. Right.
Is it all debit? And there's lots of arguments about that part of it, sure. and people trying to justify one versus the other. At the end of the day, Visa's the judge, jury, and executioner. So, they're the ones that will enforce those. And there has been, to talk about that a little bit, there has been a recent ramp up in watching that process. And I think for anyone in our industry, you don't want to ignore that. I mean, Visa is right now, it's not a rumor. It's not oh, this might happen. It's happening. There is a whole swath of secret shoppers out there that are like independent gig workers that Visa is contracting with, and they're being asked to go into places and find out if they're running compliant surcharging programs or not.
So if I'm an agent and I'm walking into a merchant, mm-hmm. I'm talking to them about dual pricing, right? We'll use that in the kind of the broadest term.
That's fine. Yeah.
Obviously I need to make sure that the processor or company or whatever I'm with offers that. Right? Talked about the necessity.
Important part. Yeah.
And I think especially as it becomes something that is talked about, I think merchants are going to wonder, am I allowed to do that? How do I make sure that I'm okay? And such. And so is it really just making sure that kind of the merchant understands what the rules are and that we agree to either one of these flavors with or without some appropriate signage? Mm-hmm. Is that kind of the way that you imagine these conversations are going with merchants?
Yeah. And absolutely. I would prompt every agent out there to really lean heavily on the ISO they're working for some guidance on that, or not working with, for guidance on this. I mean, many ISOs have different approaches to this. They have different ways that, some allow all the different flavors. Some of them say, no, we only do this. Some are saying, no, we don't do it at all. So don't come here with that. So you want to first off, make sure you start with understanding, who am I partnered with? What are they offering? If you're partnered with somebody right now that doesn't give you any ability to do this, rewind back to a few episodes back and listen to the good old days that we talked about, because you are missing out on the most prime opportunity to, and when I say that, what I mean is, like, I hope this is still around 10 years from now. I hope this is, there's always concern that as this becomes more and more, out of hand, and people find ways to try to work around, the Visa is going to just say, okay, guys, we gave you a lot of rope here and you hung yourself, and we're just done with this, sure. And there's always that concern that it goes back to more standardized pricing, but it may not, or even just people keep undercutting each other and it gets back to, more normalized pricing. So, if you're missing out on those opportunities because you're waiting for that to happen, there's really no reason to do that. But yeah, back to your question is that, it's having a conversation with the merchant about, are you wanting to talk about this type of program? And if they're, a lot of times it's, I've been wondering about that. I go to this place and I go to that place and they're doing it. Why can I do that? That's always the most common question is, am I allowed to do that? Or are they doing something illegal? And, so make sure you're armed with the knowledge to explain what is compliant, what isn't compliant, what steps we need to take to make sure that you're taken care of, to do it in a way that doesn't put, somebody in, obviously in a non-compliant situation. And then just, obviously, making sure you're there to support them, because once you've got them converted, your chances of losing that customer, I think, are pretty slim if you're there to take care of them.
Right.
Absolutely. We talked about, Visa a lot during this, and it's a reminder of this Visa secret shopper program that's going on right now. It is this concept of they do have people out there making sure it's done in a compliant way and double checking out that, what they're going to do with all that information, nobody knows. Or they can use it to enforce it. They use it to do data gathering. I don't know what, we all don't know. Everybody's kind of waiting for that, to come to some sort of conclusion. But the rumors, the fear mongering around it of okay, everybody's going to get, slapped with $100,000 fines tomorrow. I don't think that extreme is happening, but absolutely, Visa's double checking to make sure, they're very concerned about their brand awareness. They're very concerned about cardholder experience. And so I think, a lot of this is them paying attention to that and seeing how do these different scenarios affect us, both in a profitability standpoint, but more importantly, companies as large as they are, about, the customer experience and what it does to their feeling about the card brand.
Okay. Lisa, please don't sue us.
Yeah. I'm trying to be as factual as possible.
I think we got through that without anything that's going to really blow up.
I hope not.
And that is certainly one of those. You're always so generous about answering questions, but I think this is one that I know people reach out to you from time to time
regularly.
Just questions about merchant objections or any of those things. And so,
yeah, I think it's an extremely important time. I think it's something to pay attention to and to do in the most, there is, I'm not a guy that's normally one to, just say, hey, the PAC's doing this, so I'm going to do this, right? But in this scenario, I think there's a lot of safety in that. There are some people that are doing this in a really wonky way that's over here by themselves, and those are the people that are getting singled out. There are people out there that are being specifically targeted by the card brands because of some of the way they're doing these programs. The vast mass of people that are doing the dual pricing way. Now, we could sit here and pick apart exactly, is that exactly compliant? Is it compliant in every situation? Is the merchant doing, actually presenting the difference always? Like there's a lot of argument can be made on that. But the fact of the matter is that so many people are doing it. Visa has, works closely with these with these terminal manufacturers and works with them on it. These terminal manufacturers are out there saying, hey, we've worked with Visa to ensure this is compliant. They're saying all these things. And so, there's safety in that, in my opinion. There's safety in saying, like, okay, let's go along with this. Now, at some point, we may come to a point where that comes to a screeching halt and Visa says, no more of that. Merchants are getting fined. I don't believe that Visa is just going to tomorrow come out and say, we're fining everybody that does it. I think there will be hey, this is no longer, this has got to be, there's warnings and things like that. But right now there are so many people doing that if you're in this industry and you're scared about which pathway to go down, I think the dual pricing that is the most compliant way to do it. I mean, you have surcharging is for sure most compliant. Secondly, it's definitely dual pricing. It's listed as an option by Visa. People just get in the argument of how it's done exactly, whether it's right or wrong. But there's a lot of safety in that, and don't sit on the sidelines. Keep doing interchange plus 25 basis points when you could be doing making tons more money while that opportunity is there.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you walking us through kind of all the options and the history of it. And we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, John.